Here pretty quickly. Hello, everyone. We are live, hopefully, checking in on a weird Friday. If folks in the chat could let us know they can hear us and all of that, that'd be great. Yes, hello, Pepino says, our Super Bowl is over, and unfortunately, Alec walked. How are you doing, McNasty?
I'm not doing great. I'm confused. I'm not going to be straightforward with you. I'm a little confused right now. And just FYI, I'm dog sitting right now, and these two dogs do not get along at all. So I'm not over at Mike Vick's house. But if you hear some drama, I'm gonna probably mute myself for a bit. So.
Wow, that was an Atlanta reference if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, man, I'm never gonna forget that. But yeah, Leah. Oh, thank you. They can hear us. Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Hello, Dick Champagne. That's a very nice name and an even better avatar. Yeah, I mean,
this is our day today. We're talking. Dick Champagne pops in to say hello, and this is the kind of day we've had today.
Yeah, it's kind of been like this whole deal. It seems like every time we prepare for something, like it just gets thrown out the window. And we had all sorts of other notes, but of course, things took a left turn. Hello, Crystal Blaylock, Empire State of Mind, back up in this. Cannot believe this is how it ended. Yeah, and that's really like I think the note that I would like to sound here at the beginning of the stream is, I don't know how exactly Matthew Hutchins feels. Like the comments that he made basically said that he just wanted to see it in front of a jury, but like that's sort of what I'm thinking about. Is the people that were like really affected by this case, and so I think that's a good way to start, is to acknowledge how much of a bummer this is for people that wanted to see some form of justice. Hello, Pepinos, Cinnabang. Yeah, well, it's sad news. As I was talking to McNasty in the last like week or two, and as we were talking on the last couple live streams, I think we both sort of agreed that there's a pretty good chance that he could walk. And I don't know, since I've like experienced the trial process so many times from working as like a paralegal in the criminal justice system, I'm not really like so focused on like guilty or innocence. It's kind of hard to explain, but like you don't even really think that way. Like one of the most common questions you get when you work in criminal law is like, how can you represent guilty people? And it's like, well, it's an adversarial system.
They are allowed their day in court, I guess.
Exactly. Yep. And you just sort of get trained to like not think so much about like the process of it and more or about the outcome of it. And you just sort of more focus on like the process and kind of controlling the little bits of things that you can control. And so for me, like today was actually the most interesting and exciting part of the trial because there's some really interesting legal maneuverings. And I always have sort of been, I sort of have a defense mindset in that I don't like people to go to prison in general. So I'm sort of a little bit more ambivalent about whether or not Baldwin went to prison. But I know that, McNasty probably has a little bit of a different opinion than a lot of other Pepinos do. And I don't begrudge you, but I just sort of have been in a weird world for a long time,
So I kind of I was kind of in and out with meetings all day. Can you kind of run down? So when I came home from the amphitheater today, I saw the jury was gone. Can you kind of break down what happened?
Yeah, it was a really weird scene, and I have a little bit of a visual presentation here with some notes that I can go over. What I kind of tried to do was when I listened to Luke Nikas was the second chair defense attorney under Spiro. Alex Spiro was the lead counsel for Baldwin. And Nikas is the one that gave the oral argument for the motion to dismiss, which happened, in this afternoon. And he gave like a very effective presentation. And so but it was hard to follow at times because there were so many different people involved. And so let me see if I can present here. I'm going to share. I've got let's see here.
So when you give a motion to dismiss, the jury leaves, and it's like,
yeah, it's rare to that like it happens in trial, and the judge like decides that it's important enough to actually litigate, like, and send the jury home. But in this case, the judge agreed that it was important enough. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, so you can see this. That's great. I'm going to change the. Okay, no, that should be. I'm trying to think. Like, can everybody see that? Okay, like, just trying to blow up the window here. Okay, great. So I just got a little bit of a visual aid to help here, since there's like so many different people involved, and I didn't have a chance to completely fill this out, but I like this program because it's like a visual sort of like mapping program called the brain, where you just kind of have like little chunks of information, and I have notes to go along with it. So like in the center here, we have the Baldwin trial, and then we have like a lot of the different people that were involved in the motion to dismiss here. So if you'd like, I'll just kind of go over what I've got here, and I've got some notes. Let me just pull my notes. Yeah,
I cannot get over this. I can't get over Stephen Baldwin during this trial. That's
yes.
his name, right?
Yep.
What was he do? Was he listening to the Mets game? What was he doing?
I guess he's hearing impaired, and so that was like a thing that the court provides for folks that have trouble hearing. It's a thing that sort of pipes into the live stream. But another thing I'd like to do, like after we get done with this, is like there's like a number of interesting people that were in the gallery, and I did set up like a little telestrator thing so I can draw on the screen. So maybe we can do that later. But
look at Alec's face in this picture. This sums him up perfectly. That's him.
Yep. Yeah, just the expressions, and like looking at Hilaria when it on day one of the, after the jury was selected. So day one was Tuesday, I believe. I'm getting the chronology confused.
It feels like it. We've been doing this for a month.
I know. But so when we first see Hilaria in the gallery, she's sitting next to Stephen, and it was such an odd contrast because Hilaria, I think in my mind's eye, like her original face was like a much softer, sort of rounded face. She kind of had a lot of baby fat, and I think she's had like some kind of buccal fat removal or something. So she has a much more severe, angular face. And as I was kind of like glazing off into the distance watching this trial, I was like, man, like Stephen Baldwin and Hilaria kind of have like the same shaped face. It was like really weird. So,
well, what was interesting is that they didn't really acknowledge her at all until today.
Yeah,
they weren't whispering with each other. Nobody, was putting their arm around each other. And then when the paparazzi filmed them going out to eat, Baldwin's sister and Stephen were nowhere to be found. So I don't know what the dynamics are anymore of this family, but it's a hot mess.
Yeah. I'll check on the comments here in a second because we got some good ones. But like one of the things that I really sort of struck me is like how sort of outwardly emotional the Baldwins are. Like they sort of try to be, I don't know, behave one way or sort of project an image, but like Alec cried, like Stephen cried. Alec's sister, his oldest sister, was in the gallery, and she was like bawling her eyes out at numerous instances. And it was just sort of odd, like how sort of inappropriately emotive, or I don't know, it was just sort of struck me.
They're actors, and Hillary, she cried today. I don't know what that was all about. She's probably just happy that the money train is going to keep flowing for her, I guess.
Yeah. Share the Stash saying hi, and thank you for stopping in. Excuse me if I mispronounce this. Gisela C. and rich people get better outcomes. And that's really like one of the things I want to emphasize too here. I'm glad that you brought that up, is like, I think people were sort of bummed out a little bit in the subreddit about him getting acquitted, but it's like such a Pyrrhic victory. Like he spent, millions and millions of dollars to get out of a trial that he talked himself into with the Stephanopoulos interview in the first place. So it was really, if he won it all, it's like he's like winning for losing. It's such a strange.
Is he gonna sue the state of New Mexico? I'm going with probably.
That's a good question. I mean, he could probably try for some kind of, I don't know, some kind of like there is ways to sue for like malicious prosecution, but it's very difficult. I don't know what the state laws in New Mexico are though. Dick Champagne is most upset because she's going to gloat now. Yeah, but it's like she's one thing that like was really interesting that people sort of noted in the subreddit that I'm always interested in is how disconnected Hilaria and Alec are about how they appear, and there's just like something that came up again and again in their weird PDA and like the staging of like the baby photos and stuff. But Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting when she, I guess at least we'll see her posting on IG now, presumably, which is always
Oh,
fun.
yeah, she'll be back. And then,
Yeah,
I was watching Emily Baker, trying to catch up on all the stuff that I missed while I was at work, and, she was horrified because I guess they had, like, a makeout session in the in
yeah,
the middle of this trial. It's like, "What are you guys doing?"
yeah. Like as it became like sort of more and more clear that Alec was doing well, they had like a number of like longing embraces where like she was like whispering into his ear like a Svengali. It was like almost like they were in like I think the French is like the folie à deux, the two
Yeah,
people that are like mad together. Word woman Steph said the prosecutors made a dumb mistake, and it's like it's what I started talking about,
apparently.
like in terms of the process instead of the outcome. Like Alec had the best lawyers money can buy. Like Spyro is the best trial lawyer of his generation. I think this trial pretty much seals it. I mean, people were already calling him that years ago. And the prosecutor for this New Mexico is a special prosecutor, so she's not in that court all the time, which means that she's probably like a below average prosecutor. So it wasn't really a fair fight in that sense. And so yeah, I mean, I think that's important to acknowledge is that Alec really stacked the deck in his favor by spending gobs of money on this thing. So, yeah, Gisela C. When Morsi totally demeaned herself. I like your movies. Oh my god, yeah. I don't know if you caught that, McNasty, but
I did not catch that.
oh my god,
Talk
it
to
like
me.
yeah, we have to talk about this right now because it was so strange. Like the way the whole denouement of this thing went, like the end of it was so interesting and weird. It was like almost like something out of like a Seinfeld episode. It was just beyond bizarre because what happened is Morrissey got sort of boxed into a corner where she had to actually testify herself. The prosecutor did, which like is pretty rare. I mean, it sometimes happens for like a limited fact witness or something like that, but she was basically testifying about how they conducted the investigation and how like nothing was wrong, right? So she was basically defending the integrity, and she was testifying as like in like a narrative style. So she like, nobody was questioning her when she did direct. She just basically like kind of read a prepared statement sort of. And at the end of it, like when she was getting cross-examined by Spyro, he was just like laying into her, and he had all this great like material about like all these like really crazy things that she had supposedly said about Alec, like all these sort of derogatory things about he was an asshole and all this stuff. And she was like groveling, saying like, no, I think he's really great. I love his movies and I love him on SNL and I love his politics. And she was
And
basically
she
like,
said they said, "I love your politics" on the
she said
stand?
that. And then at the end, when he like the very last couple things that he asked her, I think, were like the questions about like, did you call him like whatever it was, like an a-hole or something like that? And she like, had these like really bad like denials where you could tell that she was like, I don't want to say lying, but like not accurately reflecting the truth. She would like pause and say, I don't remember exactly, just like that sort of thing. And it was like so obvious that she was just a defeated person. And then she got off the stand, and Judge Summer was like, do you guys want to do some final oral argument before I decide on the motion? And Spyro was like, nope, we're good. And Morrissey was like, nope. She was just like done dealing with anything. And like the first thing that Judge Summer said after that was like something about how like a motion to dismiss is like it was like clear from like the first words of Judge Summer that this thing was getting kicked. So
When do
it was
you think Alec knew that this was gonna probably get dismissed? Because he's been acting. First of all, I didn't know it was okay to get up and just leave a courtroom in the middle of people testifying. He's done that twice now. When do you think he knew that this was gonna be in his favor? Because he's been acting. His emotions have been all over the place.
yeah. I think like just based on sort of the nonverbal cues, like when he started like really getting sort of lovey-dovey with Hilaria, it was sort of like probably like about maybe an hour or two somewhere in there before the end of the trial. It seemed like the defense team was like saying like, oh man, this is like it's going really poorly for the prosecution. It was pretty clear at that point that it was either going to get it might get dismissed. I mean, getting dismissed like that, like a motion to dismiss with prejudice, is so rare in a trial. It's such a big win for a defense attorney because it's just like it's basically like pitching like a no hitter or something like that. Like it doesn't even get to the jury. It's just
I think the special prosecutor resigned. I don't think I've ever seen that before either.
Yeah.
Today,
Well,
I think she resigned today. It's like, I think that's probably when he knew things were going to be in his favor at that point. I think.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that detail, but I mean, yeah, it was just, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question though. I mean, if you look back at like the gallery stuff though, there's so many interesting little wrinkles like that, like just about how they were sort of interacting together. Dick Champagne, she was perpetually angry looking now. I think referring to Hilaria. Disney Dreams, hello from Australia,
Hey,
I
Disney
believe.
Dreams.
Really don't think I can watch the aftermath of this. So unfair. Yeah, I mean, it really is. But I mean, the thing that I would say in response to that is Alec is basically like really put himself in a bind in terms of his financial situation, like to do this. And it was so unnecessary in the first place. So while it's not like maybe the exact justice that we were all hoping for, and it would have been wild to see him actually go to prison, I think he has damaged himself incredibly. So
I'm
yeah.
still trying to break down how this even happened in the first place, because what I was watching today, as soon as it came into testimony that they had lapel cameras on this person dropping off this green ammo can, Spiro jumped up. And you should have seen the look on his face. I was like, this is not going to go. Something bad is happening right now.
Yeah, it was just the nonverbal stuff was very interesting to watch. The gallery was my favorite part of like the first 2 days, because there really wasn't like one of the things that we talked about a little bit in the pre-stream, just checking the audio and stuff, was Marissa Popple, the poor evidence tech, was on the stand for what seemed like a billion years. It was kind of wild to behold, because it was like, I mean, out of the 3 days she was on the stand for, like, I want to say, like, I don't know, maybe 10 hours or something in that ballpark. I mean, maybe not quite that much, but like, it just seemed like she never got off. And
when I saw her this morning on the stand, I was like, did she ever leave? Did she ever go home?
It was such a weird, and I mean, that's like, it really sort of speaks to the skill of Spyro to keep somebody like that on the stand for that long, to be able to keep drawing blood over and over again like that is, yeah, it's pretty impressive.
And so, he was going, anything she said, he was going, like when she was talking about how she shook the boxes, and if she opened them, if they're if it was labeled this and we didn't see this, and if we saw Christmas lights on the top, and we opened up the bottom and there's Christmas lights on the bottom, we just kind of assume that we don't need this box anymore. There's no stopping this guy. He was like, that doesn't, he was on every single word that she said. And that's what Alec was paying for. So you got to hand it to this guy. He was definitely, I wonder if this was the entire goal here, was to get this whole thing thrown out. I'm just curious as to what exactly happened in regards to this evidence that was, I guess, labeled a different number. So the defense couldn't get a hold of it because it was labeled differently. But I still don't understand why it matters where the live rounds came from.
Yeah, and I think maybe if I get into the presentation, I'm just trying to think like where, but I think, like, just in brief, the rule, the case law is called Brady versus Maryland. There's a bunch of other like cases that come after that, but it's the one that basically says, like, if the prosecution intentionally hides exculpatory evidence, the remedy has to be dismissal pretty much. And especially when they hide it and it only comes out like towards the end of a trial like this, because it's not just that like the evidence has has to reach like a very low threshold in terms of like how favorable it would be to the defendant. And in fact, the judge even cited in her final ruling, like, it's too late in trial to even really evaluate it. But like, it's more so like about how unfair it is to the defendant to not be able to have the evidence to prepare for trial. And, it just sort of prejudices the case because they don't, they're not aware of something like this. And it also has to do with like the way that the prosecution conducted themselves. It sort of, impeaches their credibility a little bit, because, like I said, a bunch of the other, like the witnesses that were involved in the chain of custody for all this evidence just seemed like they weren't actually doing like the bare minimum, or they were like pointing the finger in other directions, and just seemed like they were, I would say, dissembling, because I don't want to say lying. There's always potential of some kind of defamation thing or something, but they just seemed like they weren't being entirely truthful about like their accounts. And there's a couple little details like about how the bullets got put in like a different evidence number, like a file number other than Baldwin. So it looked like they were trying to hide the ball. And so those two things together.
So the bullets we're talking about, are these the ones that the defense kept calling the Good Samaritan dropped off?
So the bullets that I'm talking about are like when they first encountered Troy Tresky, he gave them, like, he sent him a picture of bullets, and that's actually like the sort of the beginning of the thread that Spyro got. Was like he had first got this picture of these bullets and showed it to the judge and said, hey, these bullets exist. And what happened is apparently Tresky told the officers about the green ammo can that was full of these rounds, and he gave them 4 bullets out of that thing. They didn't take the whole thing for whatever reason, which is weird. And they took those 4 bullets and then filed them under a different case number. And so they never came up when like they, the prosecution was like giving out discovery and, materials to the defense. And so, it was like that led into like the fact that like Tresky had this whole other green ammo can. But I think maybe at this point, like I should just kind of go into this presentation here a little bit. I'm just going to check the comments real quick. Yeah, Dick Champagne saying that he caught, I guess the weird gallery stuff, Disney Dreams. Do we know how long the defense knew about this? Surely not only the day before. I think they had it in their back pocket probably for the whole. I mean, like, I think Spyro knew that this was going to be something that he was going to spring on them. But I don't know that he knew exactly how it would play out. I mean, I don't think you can anticipate that it's going to cause a dismissal with prejudice, but I think he very much, that was like his ace in the hole, I think.
I have a feeling that I had a feeling as well, because this is the way, some of the ways that Alec was acting during this trial, like when he turned around and started talking to Hillary, and she like made she kind of smiled and made that motion with her finger to turn around. I think at that point, I think that God, that picture of Alec is killing me. I think that he kind of knew this was coming. I'm just really confused as to how how they dropped the ball on this so badly, because it didn't really have anything to do with what he was on trial for, which was pointing a gun at somebody and pulling the trigger. I'm just surprised that they dropped the ball on this so badly.
Yeah, I mean, and sort of it's like when I was talking about how like defense attorneys, what Spyro's job is to like really make things muddy and to like sow doubt. And so even if he didn't achieve a dismissal with this, it was going to make things like very weird for the jury, where they're going to have to kind of go in the tank to consider all this stuff. So it has like multiple like lines of potential utility to the defense. I mean, that's really what he wants to do, is just kind of get in the muck and make the witnesses, the prosecution witnesses, the law enforcement officers defensive. He was really great at that. Like,
he was fantastic at that. I will give him that. He was amazing at that.
Yeah, like he was getting Popple to just like kind of get like really annoyed, and just like the tone of like a witness like that is so important, because the jury, sometimes doesn't quite like retain like all of like the minutia of what they say, but like they'll really think about like, man, that witness just seemed like really defensive or whatever, right? So so I'll just kind of, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of go into like a quick sort of summary of what the defense's argument was for the motion to dismiss. And the reason why I kind of out is because there's just so many different people involved, and it's kind of a weird chronology, but it starts on November 1st, 2021, which is about, I think the shooting was on October 21st. So it's about 10, 11 days, a couple weeks after the shooting. Seth Kenney, who's the guy that sold the dummy rounds or whatever, the munitions to Hannah for Rust, was on a phone call with Corporal Alexandria Hancock, who was the lead investigator in this case. She was the redhead. I'll show you her, who was on the stand for a decent amount, probably like maybe the second most overall. Here we go.
It seems to me that she this is where everything seemed to have fallen apart from what I saw.
Yeah, like she kind of weathered the storm for the most part, like in the case in chief. But when it came back to when they were, she got called back today to testify again, for the motion hearing, and she kind of really fell apart, and her tone was very bad. So, I think just the whole the prosecution and the law enforcement just sort of sensed that the case was slipping away from them, and you kind of just could sort of see like their morale like really flagging. So anyway, you can still see this full screen, right? You can see my demarker here. Okay. So anyway, so to back up again, so Seth Kinney calls Corporal Alexander the lead investigator Hancock on the 1st of November, about 2 weeks after the shooting. And it sounds like Kenny was in contact with law enforcement and, like I said, sort of like trying to pump them for details, or he was very persistent and sort of chummy with a number of different law enforcement people, especially Marissa Popple, who got grilled about this by Spyro. And it really sort of made her look bad, because you don't want to look like you're cozy with a witness, like in a case like this. And so, he just made her Popple especially out to be like sort of overly chummy and sort of like deferring to Kenny without like sort of really, investigating what he was up to. And so,
I mean,
anyway,
why is Seth Kenny trying to insert himself into every single aspect of this? He came off as very unlikable, in my opinion. Yeah. And he was just trying. I don't know what he's doing. He's texting people. He had a problem with the search warrant. Like, is that even a thing? You don't think you can text somebody and be like, "Hey, I've got a problem with this warrant," and then he flubbed on whether or not they had closed captioning filming when they were searching. I guess it's called PDQ, I guess. Yeah. And he just rubbed me the wrong way. And
who he reminds me of is like, I think in like maybe like it's the Zodiac movie in 2007. Like they talk about like some of the types of things that like serial killer suspects like to do, and like some of them like want to get close to the investigation. So he kind of reminds me of that, where it's like he's trying to like, I don't know, he's like too interested in the details, or I don't know. It was like, it almost made him seem like more guilty to me, or like he might be involved, because I get the sense that especially because he's like in the firearms business, he probably knows like law enforcement pretty well. So he sounds like a real, one of those "how are you" type guys that's always like chatting people up and just being,
he likes to name drop, and immediately that's like a big turnoff for me.
Yeah,
super name drop. He's like a hoarder. Everything that he touches is a disaster. Like, did you see? I mean, first of all, the prop carts, which he didn't really have anything to do with, but the PDQ, that place looked like a storage facility where where somebody would store stuff that they would never be able to find again.
And this is Seth Kinney, by the way. I like to give these pictures because I think it helps if you watch the trial at all. You just sort of get a sense of him. But he's the guy that owned PDQ Arm and Prop. That was the name of his business, where he supplied prop weapons and ammo to Rust and other productions. And that's
did any of you guys hear them reading off the text messages that he was sending to people on his set? That was mortifying. What?
Yeah.
How is this guy ever going to work again, by the way, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's such a small world that I think, and it seems like he's got a lot of buddies in that world, obviously, but I mean, who knows how this will affect things? It seems like it's already sort of created some divisions between like Hannah Reed's father and these guys, Kenny and Troy Tresky, who were buddies at one point, apparently. But yeah, I mean, I just think these sort of like really specialized things, I don't know. I would I could see him still working, but who knows? This is sort of a weird black mark on him, but
well,
anyway.
speaking of working again, I think just kind of a little bit off topic here, and we'll get back on it.
Sure. Yeah.
This is going to affect the entire movie industry because it's all based on money, and time is money, and this is going to involve like anybody that does any kind of work, shoots any movies now with guns. They're going to end up having to take more time to check the guns. They're going to have to hire probably more people. This affected the whole movie industry, and they've got to be so pissed at Alec because he ruined. This was the guns on movie sets were running pretty well. I mean, there's been thousands of movie sets with guns, and of course, Alec Baldwin would be the one that had to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
So now I can see the industry not being in his favor anymore.
Yeah, and that's something that the prosecution brought up at one point that I thought was a good point. It was like the reason why they were using the real guns during the blocking is because it's cheap. You don't have to get like the second set of fake plastic guns and do all the extra changing and stuff like that. I think that was a pretty effective indicator of the state of mind of the people running that thing. So anyway,
and they're going to need more, like they're going to want these, and if they do use real guns, which they may never use another real gun on a set at all, as far as I know, but they're going to have more training, which is going to take time and is going to cost more money. So,
yeah, it's such a weird, like minute detail, like that you need to see the thing like recoil or whatever. But anyway, I'm going to get back to this real quick because I feel like we're just going to get totally off track here. But so like November 1st, Seth Kinney calls Corporal Hancock, Detective Hancock at the time, and tells her that he thinks he knows where the live bullet came from. It's like a weird thing to say, like at this juncture, like like why didn't he know right away? I don't know, whatever. Kenny says he thinks that it was Troy Teskey, who is a friend of Thel Reed, who is Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father. And then what's odd too is that Kenny seems like again, like he's like a junior police detective or something, because he's got Troy Teskey with him, and he's like, hey, you want me to get Troy Teskey on the line? And so then Troy Teskey joins the call in like a three-way with Kinney and Hancock. And then Teskey tells Hancock, the lead investigator, how Thel Reed had dropped off a batch of live ammunition at Teskey's business for safe storage. I don't know if I actually have Teskey on here. I don't think I had time, but regardless, he's like just like another guy in the armory industry, and that was like sort of buddies. And he has like another business that deals with like selling props to movies. So he says that like Thel Reed was in town and like he knew Teskey, and Teskey had a safer place to store the ammo. So Thel dropped off some live ammo at Teskey's business for storage. And the other thing that's interesting is that Teskey is a former police officer. And he's the guy that we'll see eventually will turn in the green bucket of bullets, the green ammo can, in March of this year at the end of Hannah's trial. So we'll come back to that. But so then Teskey goes on to tell Corporal Hancock that after Thel Reed dropped his ammo off at his business, later on he comes back and then retrieves some of the live ammo and left some behind. So he takes some and he leaves some. And Kinney suggests that this live ammo could be from the same batch as the bullet that killed Helena. And then Kinney points the finger at Hannah and Thel as possibly being responsible for the live ammo getting onto the set. I don't know how he like came to the conclusion that Hannah was involved, since she wasn't directly involved in like the bullet stuff, but whatever, that's what he says. And this is all sort of based on the argument, like I said, of Luke Nikas, the defense counsel, who's making the argument for dismissal. Okay, so then Teskey then says like Hancock wants to know, like, do you have any like pictures of these bullets, or can I see some? Teskey sends Hancock a photo of 4 bullets. This is the photo that eventually Alex Spiro has a copy of and shows to the judge. That is, like I said, like the string that they pull that leads to them, this whole thing unwinding. And it's also a little bit unclear from like Nikas's presentation, because he's sort of using generic pronouns a lot to refer to he, but it sounds like Hancock takes the 4 bullets that Teskey photographed but then she doesn't bother preserving the other bullets that Teskey had from the same source, which is that green ammo can. So she just takes the 4 bullets, leaves the other ones, and like, I guess, whatever, just just forgets about it, or who knows. It's really weird because like cops usually are pretty, like with evidence like that, they usually just take the whole thing. So it's very strange. But so that was in, like I said, like shortly after the shooting in 2021. We smash cut to 2 years later, and now we're in November 2023, and it's on the eve of Hannah's trial. And Teskey is a witness in that trial. He's on the witness list, and he's doing what's called a pretrial interview with Special Prosecutor Carrie Morrissey, who's she was the new prosecutor, so she probably hadn't had an interaction with him.
Is she the one that takes her glasses on and off about 10,000 times a minute?
And she was the one that was the main prosecutor in this trial, and the one that was testifying at the end. And so what Morrissey like starts asking Teskey like a lot more probing questions about these bullets than her predecessor, who for whatever reason the old prosecutors that ended up like resigning didn't like bird dog this. They didn't follow it up. But when Morrissey starts like asking about it, Teskey, starts telling her this whole story about how he was holding on to some stuff for Thel Reed, and Morrissey happens to ask him like, "Well, do you still have any of this ammo?" And Teskey's like, "Yeah, I've got some of it, but like, I told Hancock about it like 2 years ago, and she never came and picked it up. So I've been shooting some of the rounds since then." But so like, there's this whole weird like chain of evidence issue there, where it's just like, God, what a sloppy operation. But based on like Morrissey's new line of questioning, Teskey then tells her about this interaction with Thel Reed when he came by to pick up that ammo, because it wasn't that like Thel Reed just came up and picked up that ammo and left. That's when Thel Reed, Seth Kinney, and Teskey all went to the set of 1883 Yellowstone, which is like a limited series that was also shooting in that same area. So it's really kind of, this is why it's so confusing, because there's so many different moving parts and like 2 different sets. But the really crazy thing about that 1883 Yellowstone set is that they were doing like live firing drills on there. And so that's where the ammo can came from. It was just a can that they were putting all the spent brass in, right?
Is that actually where, I mean, did anybody ever tie that in to the live rounds that were found on sets?
So it's really, so like what's really interesting about this is it's all basically based on this account from Teskey, and they did sort of look at like photos of the different bullets and try to compare them, because like they like they said they had that photo, and then they compared them to like the known round. But I don't think that they were able to really get that far. But it was just all sort of based on this account. But it is sort of backed up in a number of other ways, because like, for example, after they shot and they had the ammo can full of spent brass, like it was actually technically Thel Reed's property. But Teskey again took the ammo bucket with the spent brass back to his place, and then Thel subsequently like checked with him after like a few days after the Rush shooting, saying like, "Hey, do you have that spent brass?" And like Teskey was like, "I think I'm gonna hold on to that for right now. Like, you can just write that off," because I think he knew that it might be evidence or something like that. So there's other little details that sort of make it, it's not just this guy's testimony. There are some other like puzzle pieces that make it seem more likely. But like, so here, like I kind of wanted to, I filled in some other background details from other sources, because like, just to sort of like validate some of this stuff, like in April 2022, the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office released like a huge 550-page report that documented the nature of the live rounds that were found on the Rush set. This is something that I think we've talked about a couple times, and it was really interesting, like looking at this report, because it like went into pretty interesting and minute detail about exactly the kind of calibers and manufacturers of rounds that were found on the scene of the Rush shooting. There were like 4 different like brands of manufacturers of rounds that were found, and
Right.
it also laid out like the locations that the live rounds were found. One was in an ammo box, 2 were on top of a cart, and 1 was in Baldwin's bandolier, or like the strap that he wears with like the ammo.
And one was in Ackles' bandolier as well.
Huh.
Ackles is the other, which is
Oh yeah, Jensen
crazy.
Axel. Yeah.
Which is crazy because I guess the next scene was going to be. I don't know the story of how Rust was going to go down, but it looks like Ackles is one of the actors, and he had a live round on his bandolier.
Yep.
And the next scene that they were going to do was going to be a shootout between Alec and Ackles, who played a sheriff or a cop or something.
Yep.
And there was going to be a shootout, and they obviously didn't get that far, but it kind of opens up the question as to what this could have ended differently, but it's equally as bad.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does is very suggestive. The other thing that was really kind of nuts, that like I think I'd heard of before, but just like reading it in this report was like kind of crazy to sort of absorb after sort of knowing how this whole thing turns out. Is the other thing is all the live rounds, all 4 live rounds, were Starline Brass manufactured, which is very odd because Starline Brass doesn't actually make live ammo. What they make are like sort of just like the jackets. They make like super high quality jackets that people like custom load, like people that are like really into like making their own rounds and stuff like that. But they're also used
they like a refurbished. Yeah.
Right. So, but what's really interesting about that is that like somebody had to make these custom loads, and what was especially confusing is they have the same markings as the dummy rounds that the production was using, which were also Starline Brass. And when you see Hannah Gutierrez Reed in her interview with the police, like them telling her, oh, like all the live rounds were Starline Brass manufactured, she doesn't seem to be aware of like what Starline Brass is and that they only make like dummy rounds. So it's like it's pretty obvious that she was like way out of her depth. And we'll touch on that again a little bit later, but I kind of want to foreshadow that because it's hard to say, like, because who knows if there's some weird conspiracy here, but like there's just so many weird suggestive things that seem like it was like some kind of sabotage. And with all these like weird gun guys, who knows? Anyway.
Well, I mean, the fact that all the cameramen walked off that day.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot rule that out. And I kind of thought that suspicious from day one. Maybe that bullet that bullet was meant for Alec, for all I know,
Yeah. I just always trying to sound like a little bit of like a note of caution because I don't want to be like super conspiracy guy, but it's just very suggestive, It's very suggestive. And it gets even weirder because Kenny calls Corporal Hancock, the lead investigator, the redhead, in October 2022. And at that point, Kenny is pointing the finger at yet another supplier of blanks named Joe Swanson, who runs a company called Motion Picture Blanks. So like Kenny's like saying, like earlier he's saying, a couple weeks after the shooting, it was Fel Reed and Hannah Gutierrez Reed. In October 22, he now says, I think it was Joe Kenny, Joe Swanson, who runs another competitor, I assume, of selling motion picture props. And his suspicions were based on the fact that Swanson had previously made live rounds using Starline Brass components, which is like, that's what your suspicions based on. It just seems like a weird, I don't know. It's like, that's what like they're for basically, unless you're making dummy rounds from them. It's just like, it just seems like a very thin sort of basis for this. But anyway, it just seems like Kenny's
like at the time, rounds were very expensive during that time.
Oh yeah.
And I know a lot of people that were, refurbing ammunition at that time, but but you would think they would be able to trace it back to who refurbished it. There's a lot that goes into refurbishing a round.
Yeah,
a lot. But you would think that they would be able to trace it back, but it just seems like somewhere along the line that it just got skewed.
Yeah. The other thing to mention about Starline Brass, the company, is like they're, I don't know a whole lot about guns, but from my understanding is that they're a pretty high-end manufacturer of this type of stuff. Like they're made in the USA and they supposedly use really high quality, and they they're also like, I think like some of their products are based on like the designs from like the Old West and something like that. You know, so like a lot of people for those type of rounds, I think they usually go in a revolver. Or I don't know. It's just they seem like they could be very expensive, and for their product category, they're pretty high end. Anyway, this takes us back to Kenny, Thelreed, and Teskey taking the ammo to the 1883 Yellowstone set. This was it was discussed in the 550-page report from the sheriff's office, and Thelreed said that he and Kenny had supervised live firing training on the 1883 Yellowstone set, and Thel said that Kenny kept the reloaded rounds that had been used in the live training, and further said that Kenny refused to return to him the spent brass, which actually belonged to Thel shortly after the Rust shooting. So, like I said, we have this statement from Thel that backs up, in essence, the account of Teskey. And again, like it's like these three like gun guys. Like it's just like hard to sort of. I had to like listen to Nikis's presentation a couple times in a row because I was like, "Who's he talking about here? Who's he talking about here?" I'm pretty sure I got the details right, but anyway. At this point, Nikis then describes how Thel and Kenny did the live fire on the 1883 Yellowstone set and the subsequent issue with the ammo can. And this seems like, it seems kind of nuts to me that like they would be doing live fire stuff at this other set. And basically their reasoning was they wanted to have like the actors and crew like understand like how the recoil worked. It just seems like a pretty
like training exercises. They keep hammering it in though that like, oh, you know, live ammo is not allowed near a movie set, but apparently they were right down the hill on 1883 using live rounds. So I don't know what to think anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly paints a picture of like, you know, we were talking about last stream or the stream before about how the people on the Rust set were alleged to have been doing plinking, or there was confirmed in some detail, but it wouldn't surprise me at all because it seems like that's just sort of how these guys operate. I mean, they do live firing right next to a movie set. It seems like you wouldn't want to cross those streams, but you know, apparently they do. Anyway, I'm almost done here. Teskey told Morrissey in their November 2023 pretrial interview that he thought the ammo that was in the ammo can was the same ammo that killed Helena Hutchins. Morrissey at this point tells Teskey to preserve the ammo, right? Things as evidence. And she also asks like follow-up questions, asking if like Teskey is aware of any evidence that the Rust shooting was a sabotage, which is an interesting question for Morrissey to ask at this juncture. Teskey, being a helpful guy that likes to volunteer useful information, says, yes, in fact, Seth Kenny called me during the Rust filming and said that he, Kenny, wanted to get Hannah Gutierrez Reed fired.
Kenny was apparently threw her under the bus like I've never seen anyone thrown under a bus before.
It's so weird. Like I get the sense that there was like a weird hostility between this small world of like armor people and their, you know, probably competing for business or who knows, and for jobs. But Kenny was telling Teskey that he was like unsure of how to do this and worried about Thelreed not being happy about it. So anyway, Nikis mentioned that Sarah Zachary was the person who disposed of the bullets on set. Police were unsure.
Which they never did. They never found those, correct?
No, they didn't. You know, it's just like another detail that's like so random. There's so many like moving parts. That's Sarah Zachary. She testified briefly. I think it was like yesterday. And then the other one that here's Thelreed. This guy's like, you know, he's like, I think in his like late 70s, early 80s nowadays, but he's like a legendary trick shooter and armor guy. He's the father of Hannah. And he seems like a lot of the people like in that world are sort of competing for his approval. It's sort of a weird deal, but
I like how his fingers on the trigger in that picture. Nice.
Yeah. I need to go back to that. That's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
Lord, what is going on? I don't even understand this anymore.
Wow, it's like right stuck in the guard. Wow, what a nutball,
man! It's like, dude, what are you guys doing?
And the texts, there's so many crazy things with the police were. The police were never able to determine whether or not they were the live bullets because Zachary disposed of them, so they weren't able to be recovered. So they don't know like what the bullets are she threw away. But she did admit to them that she threw away some bullets. And she was on set and texting with Kenny the guy who Teskey said was trying to sabotage Hannah in the wake of the shooting. And Zachary was also angry with Hannah, apparently, from her texts. So then Morrissey, the lead prosecutor, the one that was on the stand at the end of the trial, being shaming herself, groveling, she doesn't end up actually retrieving the ammo that Teskey told her about. And this is like the second time that apparently Teskey has told the prosecutor's office about this ammo, and they've done nothing. So this is in November 2023. At the end of Hannah's trial, Teskey finally just brings the ammo can and turns it over on March 6, 2024. And they showed this today. They had like a guy testify that was actually at the sheriff's office. And you know, they showed his like body cam footage. His name was Lieutenant Brian Brandel, and he just
he brought this can to the sheriff's office.
Yep. At the end of Hannah's,
Merry Christmas, guys. Is that how this works?
I guess he felt like compelled because like nobody was getting back to him, and he's like, shit, her trial's ending. Like, you guys, you might want this. And so he goes and just turns it over to this Lieutenant Brandel is apparently like the supervising officer on duty. And so, you know, today's trial, part of what they showed in the motion hearing was, you know, just for chain of custody, like Brandel's body cam footage of Teskey showing up and turning over the bullets. So yeah, that was.
And they found out about that today.
I get those details. That's my understanding. Yeah. So.
Because I saw Spiro jump up like his hair was on fire, and I knew that this isn't good.
Yeah.
And I was like, "There's no way the trial's going to end this way," because they have so much of all the things, you know, that would you know throw the trial out. This because they had so much evidence again, because Alec, this I was convinced he was going to go to jail because of that simple fact that he pulled the trigger. I did not think that there would be a mistrial. I don't know if it's called a mistrial because they couldn't, because of where the live rounds came from. I never in a million years thought that was going to play into this.
Yeah, and that's like one of the things I was like saying, like I think during the second stream that we did, I was like, you know, it's hard to anticipate like all the possible defenses that Spiro could have up his sleeve, and it's like, you know, this is exactly sort of like in that ballpark where it's like, how could you, you know, and again, like I haven't been like exhaustively following the file, so that's why you kind of have to defer because, you know, these are great litigators. Cheryl Bagshaw saying that she also thinks that the prosecution in some way knew in some way since Hannah's trial when Teskey turned the bullets in. Yeah, it's just so weird that they and Veritas Forever saying that Johnson resigned during the trial. So I guess he was the supervisor of Morrissey. I'm not sure.
I think that was the special prosecutor.
Okay.
All right. The thing is about the live rounds with Hannah's trial is that not that I agree with Seth Kenney on anything, but he's got a point. She loaded live rounds into that gun, and I don't see how. Are they going to try to get her trial overturned as well?
It's a great question, and I was thinking that something that to circle back to, but it's like, it's definitely something that's going to be in all of her appeal pleadings because her appeal's still live, which is great for her. I mean, I think. I don't know. It's just so hard to say because, you know, to be honest with you, like I've worked on like lots of murder cases that had like live issues like this, you know, where it's like you look at the letter of the law and you're like, man, like this is Brady material and the prosecutor did weird stuff, and it's just so rare that it actually gets overturned. So, you know, it's hard to evaluate in a vacuum like that because there's tons of cases where the prosecution hides the ball and does shitty stuff, and you know, you don't get like a dismissal with prejudice. It's just such a rare I don't know, but I think the reason why it makes sense in this case is because Spiro waited until the perfect moment at the end of trial to spring it, which meant that like it had to be evaluated in a much different context than something pre-trial, you know, where you can have all sorts of other remedies because you haven't gone down the road of being in trial yet. So I don't know, that it's to be determined. My head's still kind of swimming trying to figure out all the details, but that was.
I think we're all in the same boat on that. I just can't believe that I did not. ever think in a million years that the discrepancy was going to be where the live rounds came from. And Spiro jumped on that, and it was over just like that.
Yeah, it's the thing that was like kind of like baffling me at first is like, where's the nexus between that and Baldwin? But and then Disney Dreams was asking like, how the hell did they find out? And I don't remember exactly how Spiro said something about who got him the picture, but because like that's where it started. Is Spiro's told the judge, "Hey, I have a picture of these 4 bullets that aren't in evidence," and I can't remember where he said he got those from, but Gisela C. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you could correct me, that'd be great. I'm sorry. When you think about it, Spiro probably could have gotten Hannah off. Oh yeah, her trial was messy too, and I didn't watch it nearly as closely, but I mean, like that's a great point and something to emphasize is that if Hannah had the same sort of representation, she would have had a much better chance. It always kind of goes back to the OJ case, but like when you got the dream team, you got a puncher's chance.
Yeah, and they will fight. If the glove doesn't fit, that type thing, like the most random thing. Like I just never in a million years thought that. I'm not familiar with how the courtrooms work, but if there's one flaw, if for example, them labeling this small piece of evidence, the number, it's game over.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something that you have to really kind of consider about the way the defense is performing is they just need to hit one homer. They just need one reasonable doubt. And so like when Spiro was having like a kind of like a weak opening, it's like, it'd be great, ideal to have like a good through line, a good narrative. That's very important. But it's like, he's always trying. I don't know. I was just so impressed by him. CB saying that they think it came out during the end of Popple's testimony.
I mean, she was for what seemed like 2 months on the stand.
Yeah,
she was getting hammered, and I could tell. I knew what he was doing. It was going south. When I saw her on the stand this morning, it was starting to go south. She was getting frustrated, and you could tell. And it's amazing how these lawyers do this. He could tell she was getting flustered, and he was just hammering at it. It was crazy.
It was almost like enervating him. Like he was getting like, he was like
right,
just up for it. And the other thing, like I always think when I saw Papa on the stand for so long, and this is another OJ reference and a deep cut. She really reminds me of Jill Shively. I don't know if anybody remembers her from the OJ case, but she was this like wacky witness, sort of like Seth Kinney, and like involving herself too much, who said that she saw like OJ's Bronco like speeding away from the scene of Nicole's case, basically like way too on the nose witness who was like trying to insert herself in the case. And it turned out that like she was full of S, but like she never got called because she sold her story to like hard copy. I don't know if you remember her.
Yes, I do remember that now.
Yeah. The whole Jill Shively thing is like anyway, like I'll just show you a quick photo. Yeah, this is
Hey, like, I have to go on mute for a quick sec.
Okay, yeah. I'll just pull up this picture here and show you guys. I had like I actually made like a photo comparison, but I can't find it but like I was like, oh my god, like I'm actually, I think I might have done it at work or something like that. But I put like a side by side with Shively and Popple because they look like so similar. Oh, that's not what I want. Let's see here if I can. Yeah, well, whatever. Hopefully you guys can see that. Yeah, she just kind of has that same sort of like short haircut and sort of like glazed over expression. Interesting. Anyway, I'm like way too into the OJ case. I could talk about it for like a billion years. Yeah, and one other thing that I noticed is like there's all sorts of weird chatter on Twitter, which I don't generally follow social media stuff, but like there's all these rumors going at the end of today about how there are going to be a deal cut. CB, did you guys see towards the end of today when Spiro asked Morrissey if she referred to? Yeah, as an arrogant prick, and that was like such a coup de grace, because I thought it was pretty obvious that Morrissey was like full of S at that point. She was trying to like deflect and like had these like weird long pauses. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but it was just sort of at the end of like this whole series of her just coming off like really disingenuous, and like she was like basically like a drowning woman, like looking for anything to survive. And yeah, Spyro just like handled her, took her to the woodshed, and I think she was defeated at the end of that. So hello Pepino. Alec's head snapped around when he heard Morrissey was calling him those names. Yeah. God, the
it was funny
expressions there.
watching the closed captioning, because they 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 don't like to put stuff like that in closed captioning, so that for some reason I got a big kick out of that.
Yeah, I gotta find I think I'm gonna find like maybe like we could play some clips of the live stream, because there was like some really interesting moments at the end of the stream, like right before Judge Summer declared it as a mistrial. You could see like Alex Spyro like gearing up for it, and like everybody sort of being anticipated, but Spyro especially like was like almost like he was having an out of body experience, because you could just tell that this was like a real big one for him, you know?
Oh yeah.
So there's just a lot of like really interesting sort of nonverbal stuff going on in the background, I thought.
Man, I really thought that we had a case. I really thought we did. And I can't believe going back to the OJ case, it's always the littlest thing that can, squeeze them through the door of reasonable doubt. And that's all they need. It's so crazy.
Yeah. And, like one of the attorneys I worked with at the beginning when I started working at the public defender agency, like a billion years ago, told me that like, she was like a really disorganized, but like brilliant attorney. Like her files were just like shit, but she was so good at trial. And she just said that like, I just focus on like the one important thing, and it's so meaningful to me, because like, especially in trial, like people have these like pretty well-known biases where they'll remember like the first thing you say and the last thing you say, and like maybe something in the middle. Like they'll take like 3 points from what you say. So if you talk to them for an hour, if you talk to them for 10 minutes, it's going to have like roughly the same effect. So it's like, you just have to like really boil it down and know your case like better than anything. And I think that's what I was trying to describe with what Spyro does. Like, he doesn't believe in expert witnesses. He doesn't believe in consultants. He doesn't believe in like a lot of the stuff that other people do. He zigs when everybody else zags, because he's more focused on finding like the one thing that's going to be important, or maybe like a handful of them. But it's like, I don't know. It's just such a, trial is such a weird.
I mean, well, it's such a weird thing, because, when it comes down to it, it really doesn't matter where the live ammo came from. It really doesn't. Like, in the, it's like a plane crash. There's never, one thing that causes a plane crash. It's always a multitude, several chains of events has to happen. Live rounds were introduced on the set. Hannah loaded them. Dave Halls, don't know what this guy's doing on anywhere near a movie set, was like, yeah, this is a cold gun. Nobody still knows what that means. And Alec, and then the last line of defense is the actor. He's not, and he is not supposed to check that gun. Alec is so stupid. I would never trust him to check a gun. But he pointed the gun and he pulled the trigger. But it's just so crazy this whole thing got thrown out when it really didn't have much to do with the fact of how she actually died,
Yeah. And especially like what Alec's participation in it, and like when evaluating in terms of like the elements of his offense, it doesn't make sense like on its face like that. But I think again, it's more about like the nature of the evidence and how reliable it is. Like it's like if you find like a cockroach like in one place, like during like daylight, especially, like there's a billion more somewhere else. So I think that's sort of Hello Pepino said that Bowles, who's HGR's attorney, is asking for immediate dismissal of HGR due to today's findings, and I wouldn't be surprised, because it's there's a concept in criminal law which is called fruit of a poisonous tree, and I don't know if this exactly applies here, but it's a well-known concept. It usually has to do with like indictments and stuff like that, but it's like it's it's sort of it applies sort of in spirit, and there's also like a concept known as like lenity in law, where like if all things being equal, it should go to the defendant, right? Because our system is set up to like let the 10 innocent, or 10 guilty go free for every innocent or whatever. Like that's sort of like one of the foundational aspects of it. So it's like, I don't know. I really kind of do feel bad for Hannah on some level. I mean, she is like sort of like a,
me too.
I don't know. Yeah, she's a.
I mean, even Seth said that sometimes shaking shaking the blanks was kind of muddy.
Yeah.
And when he mentioned that, I was like, poor girl, she's what, like 19 years old.
I think she was 24 at the time.
She's got Alec Baldwin breathing down her neck. Could you imagine?
No, she was. I mean, what a terrible situation. It's like one of her first jobs. I think the last job that she did on the Cage movie also had problems. She's a Nepo kid. And
they still hired her, though. They still hired her.
Well, it's because they didn't, it's probably because they didn't have the budget. But and the other thing is, like, she was working like 2 gigs too. Remember, like she wasn't even on the scene at the time because she was doing the other thing where she was dealing with props or whatever. So it's like, and it was during COVID. I mean, there's all these like weird exigent circumstances, and so I do feel like she was way out of her depth, and they never should have put her in that position, which is why when they got the producer stuff kicked out for Baldwin, that was like a real bad sign for the prosecutors. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with her. Disney Dream saying that Spyro almost snapped his neck when Alec walked out of the court the day before. Yeah.
Do we even know what was he doing? Like what was that? That I did actually see. I've never seen that before. Where was he going? Was he just upset?
Yeah, I don't know. You're usually not supposed to be able to do that because it's actually like a rule that the defendant usually needs to be there during the whole trial, or else there can be issues because you have like the right to confront witnesses in person and stuff like that. But maybe it was during like the motions stuff, because that's where it kind of gets confusing. Is like it seems like it was all like one big thing, but like it was these weird little like trials within a trial where there was like the actual case in chief, but that got stopped at various points to do these, like the last half of today basically was all motion hearing, which is different than an actual jury trial. And I don't think Alec needs to be there. It's not the same rules, but I don't know. Yeah.
So I just want to circle back a little bit. What was it today that, at what point did they say the jury's we need the jury to leave right now? What happened at that point?
God, I'm trying to remember the chronology, but I think it was after. So Spyro is like presenting all these, and it's another really brilliant thing that Spyro and co-counsel did was like they kept earlier, and this is why I'm pretty sure that like they had this in their back pocket, is they kept hammering on all these other discovery issues. Like one of the things I recall from the pretrial litigation is they were like, you're not giving us all these emails, you're not redacting them correctly. So it seemed like they were like making up discovery issues that were like real petty. And they're also like making discovery issue out of the gun. Like Spyro would continually bring up like, oh yeah, and you broke the gun. So they had like sort of it as a theme where they'd be like, okay, so you're not getting this discovery or this discovery. And some of it kind of seems small, but like that's when at some point this afternoon, Spyro, like at the end of like a couple other issues he was bringing up before the jury came back in, he was like, oh yeah, and there's this photo that I just got of these 4 bullets, and I'm getting a copy printed for you right now, Judge. And I think it was like, and so that's when the judge asked for it to be, for there to be argument. And so that's when Nikas gave his presentation, which was very like, it was almost cinematic in the way that he described it. I mean, he just had like it dialed in where he went through the whole sequence of events. And then, Morrissey responded ineffectually. And that's when the judge was like, I think this is how it went down. It's so much stuff going on today. By the way, like while I'm doing all this, I was like doing other legal research for my actual job. So it's like, God, but, yeah, so I think that's what happened is then, when, Judge Summer heard the argument, she was like, okay, this needs to we need to, this needs to be like, we need to have witnesses come back in and testify about this in a motions hearing. So that's when they brought back in, I think Popple came in. I'm trying to remember the sequence, but Popple came in, the lead detective, Hancock, and I think a couple, maybe somebody else, but Kenny, I think too. So they had like a whole nother round with like some of the witness, like all these witnesses had testified before, but now they're testifying specifically about these bullets.
Yeah, it's like a trial within a trial. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it was wild.
Seth Kenny, I just came off as just, oh man, this guy. I've never seen a witness on the stand with that kind of arrogance. He came off as very unlikable. I'm just really upset that this came down to semantics of the prosecution not turning over evidence to the defense. I can't believe they did that.
Yeah, and that's why I think I have like such emotional distance with this. It's like I've just been through this like so many times and had so many like weird, like unsatisfying, like ineffable, like inexplicable resolutions where like what just happened, and like so many weird things have happened. It's like you just learn to like not get too wrapped up in these, because it's just like there's going to be another one tomorrow and it's going to be real weird and unsatisfying. And like, just for example, like like one of the first like cold cases or old murder cases I worked on when I was working at the public defender agency like 10-15 years ago was this murder that happened, a double murder here in Juneau in like the early 80s, right? And like it was like an interesting case that had some really interesting issues with hair and fiber evidence, which is like a discredited forensic science. And that made me like really become interested in like all these discredited forensic sciences. There's a ton of them, like arson science and bite mark and tool evidence and on and on and on. There's like a billion different versions of this. But so that case, like I started working on it in like probably like 2008 when I got a letter from this guy who's still in prison, by the way. And it just had a hearing like earlier this month, because that same PCR, the post-conviction relief application, still like the appeal's still being litigated. And so it's like you just like learn like this stuff, just like it never really has like, the legal system is so screwy that like endings like this where it's like almost like a movie ending are so weird and rare. And
dude, I was looking online today. Scott Peterson's name came up. Is
yep.
it what? Well, I thought that guy was locked in a cell somewhere, long gone. Are we still arguing about his case? Is he gonna? What? I just didn't know that cases lasted this long. Dude, the poor taxpayers,
Yeah, and a lot of times, like these cases, like the Scott Peterson's case, my understanding is that there's some live appeal and it's being handled by the Los Angeles Innocence Project, which is actually not, I guess, affiliated with the National Innocence Project, which has branches in different states. Speaking of OJ, the Innocence Project was started by Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, the DNA lawyers on the Dream Team. It's got like a ton of people off death row because they, started. It involves what I was just talking about with all these false forensic sciences. Like the hair and fiber stuff was exposed by the Innocence Project generally, because they started like looking at all these cases where people had been convicted based on these FBI hair and fiber guys saying, yeah, this guy's hair matches hair that was found at the scene, and like the error rates, like, it's very unlikely. It's a match. They'd say like this kind of stuff, like very certain. But then, like, years later, when DNA became a thing, the Innocence Project would go back and like test the actual hairs if they had roots and good DNA, and they'd be like, oh yeah, this guy was totally innocent. And there's been a number of those kind of cases. And so it's just, so it gets confusing, but I'm not even really sure what the Peterson thing is. I just heard about it in the news that it's being litigated, but I guess on one level it's not surprising because it was like mostly a circumstantial evidence case.
There very much so was.
Yeah, but I didn't.
Is this like is it a nonprofit agency that like helps people out on death row? Because he is on death row, right?
I don't think so. Because with California, it's like really weird because they have had like they've kind of gone back and forth a number of times, but I don't think that I don't know. I don't think so. I could find out really quick. But yeah, I haven't really looked into that because it's like I said, like it's hard for me to like even like care about like these
All
kind of
right.
cases. Yeah,
Well,
it's like
so I don't want to, I don't want to kind of get off topic here, but
yeah, it's fine. I think it's
so
cool, but yeah,
okay, so hey, Disney Dreams, by the way, do you think Alec gets to play the victim now, in the same way he could have with a not guilty verdict? I think the question is that I have, not to not to get off topic of what we're talking about with the trial. Where is his career going to go after this? Because this reality show, I guess, is still happening. Ugh. Um,
yeah,
and he is. I'm assuming he's going to sue New Mexico to get some cash. I don't think I can't see him being cast in any movies anymore. Just that's my personal opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but
mm. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's like there's so many scumbags in Hollywood that end up sort of coming back that it's like hard to rule them out. I guess on one level, but
right.
yeah,
They
I
seem
think
to get away with pretty much everything. But I
yeah,
think that he I don't know, just what I was talking about, the fact that he definitely changed the industry in the sense that it's going to cost people more money if they want to use um, weapons that actually fire, because they're going to need more training. They're going to need more people to check everything, or they're going to need to use fake guns. So the industry is, he literally did affect the way the industry uses guns on sets, no
yeah,
question.
for sure.
And
And I think that like the other sort of like corollary to that is like even if he does get work again, is he going to get the kind of work that can pay like his expenses? Because as we went over last stream, like the amount of money this guy's laying out, burning through, his burn rate is insane. So it's like, yeah, maybe he can like get like a bit part in something, because he's like a discount rate actor at this point. But it's like, is he gonna like have the space to rehabilitate himself and get like another big payday? Like, or I mean, because I really think that like the TLC thing is probably like as good as it's going to get for them, which is probably going to
oh,
be
and
terrifying.
I mean that you don't hear that very often. The best you're gonna do is a TLC reality show that you don't hear very often. I can't see him because he's not getting any younger, and like we were talking about in the last time that we did a live, I think he has problems walking because he uses a stroller, and
Yeah,
because he's not going to be seen out there, because this is his bread. This is all his family has. He is the because we managed to wipe Hillary out. She's not going anywhere. She's not making any money. She's got no sponsorships and never will get any. So he is the family's main resource, and he I don't think he's cognitively doing too well, and he's having trouble walking. So I'm assuming that he may just start doing like voiceovers. I don't know how good that pays, but I don't see him being cast in a movie anytime soon, even though he'll
yeah,
try. No question.
yeah. I finally like the good footage of him like walking into the courtroom, for the last few days, and he did look like very like tentative and shuffling, which is weird because he just had hip surgery like a year or so ago, and like you're supposed to, I think, eventually sort of recover your mobility, but it seems like he's sort of deteriorating, which is got to be concerning. Chicago Christine had an interesting comment where they said that there's a lot of talk about Sarah Z, the prop master, and Kenny having an affair, and that's interesting. I hadn't heard that, and it sort of makes me wish like I was in the area because all that local goss, like
Just
there's
it wouldn't
so much.
surprise me. That guy
Yeah,
seems like such a skis. Would not surprise me at all. I just didn't he send her text messages that said like stop talking, don't say anything.
Yeah, I think he
You
sent.
don't need a lawyer. Just like STFU. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
I can't remember if it was Sarah or Hannah or both, but he sent like a hush emoji to at least one of them. I remember. Hello Pepino saying that they don't think that the jury heard anything today, did they? And they heard from Popple was on, I think, this morning. So there was part of today was actually the case in chief. It is hard to disentangle because it's like a lot of the same witnesses. Like Popple was just everywhere. I think she was on both in the case in chief and in the motions hearing today. So it's like very easy to get them confused. But that's my recollection. Yeah, Disney Dreams asking about. Do you think Alec gets to play the victim? Okay, yeah, we touched on that. Dick Champagne, God, what a great name. Alec and Hilaria are always victims of the
Yes,
bullies.
Mr. Champagne. I agree with you. They are always the victim of bullies, but I don't. I think that this TLC reality show is going to be. Oh, I still can't believe they're doing this. I'm like literally speechless. But I just want you guys to know, just hang tight because there are whistleblowers out there that can end this that can end him. I don't think this is over yet. So just it may take a while, but people are gonna start. He's not a good guy, and she is a horrible person. So just hang tight, and we're just gonna hopefully be able to see what we can do just to get these people off social media and off television.
Yeah, the television thing is really concerning because, like, when you start to think about it in terms of the financial angle that we've been laying out over the last couple streams, it seems like one of their only escape hatches is to sort of,
Pimp out their kids.
get the kids in like a Disney show or something like that, right? And so this is like a perfect vehicle in that sense to, make they're probably thinking like, who could make our kids like the next, Justin Bieber, for example, who happens to be in the family, or Hannah Montana or whatever. Like those kind of kid type things are very lucrative, and I'm sure that the executives at those companies would be like, "Oh, Baldwin kids, perfect." It's just such a creepy.
It's just a. I mean, it's a mess. I mean, they're coming up next on TLC, My 600-Pound Life. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, really?
I think we have to go to TLC's IG because it's just so funny.
Oh
I
my
can't
God, I
believe.
had never even thought about that. Please do tell.
Yeah.
Have they started advertising for this show? Are they already filming for this show?
I don't know, but I mean, I would imagine that they sort of like have to be, because like there's just so much good footage to get, and like the way that Hilaria and all the Baldwins are sort of operating is like, oh, like it's just like typically like how they act, like when like as if they are being watched, which they were in terms of like the, oh, you know what it was? Is it the Instagram, or I'm trying to think of I'm just trying to think. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So like, this is like what I was seeing is and I'm not like a big on reality TV. So I'm scrolling through this. I see
My Big Fat Fabulous Life. Did I just read that?
Yeah. And like MILF Manor 2.
Oh yes. Which is
and
like literally, I don't know if you guys ever watched 30 Rock. That was a spin-off. That was a one of the NBC like fake shows that they had. It's called MILF Island.
Oh
And it
my
was
God.
hilarious.
Wow.
But the fact that they were like, yeah, let's do MILF Manor. I've never watched that show and don't intend to. But
Yeah. MILF.
I just wait, two? Was there a what? Are we
Yes.
getting confused because there wasn't a first one that we
And
didn't
then so
see?
like Little People Show, like My 600-Pound Life. I mean, this is all, it's like a carnival. It's like a modern version of like, like a
It
bearded
really is.
woman.
And
then
like
like,
nothing good has ever come out of anything from TLC. I'm sorry. They used to be legit. It used to be called the Learning Channel, like back in
yeah.
back when I was growing up. It's clearly don't know where they went wrong here, but
He's the original MILF Manor. Oh wait, no, it's
oh
two.
no, it's just see, we might not understand it.
Two new MILFs.
MILF Manor. Dude, I can't. I seriously can't do this right now.
Yeah, I know, but
Wait, hold on. What?
We're
was
almost
that?
there, I think, though. You know, like it's like such a. I feel so terrible because it's so exploited. But then you
What
see
is
this
the plot? What is the plot
Baldwin,
of
like
MILF Manor?
TLC shared this. This is apparently the only place, and Anna
This is
Roisman
it?
liked it. But this is like the only place that I guess TLC has officially acknowledged because it's not on their website, which it sort of makes sense because they apparently only do trailers. But it's just so funny that like that's like and right next to it's like super fat guy like
Right.
Doctor No.
Who's ordering takeouts like when as soon
Yeah,
as the doctor leaves?
yeah.
So
Sorry.
McBloppy, Mr. McBloppy, he will get on history as the guy who shot and killed Helena. Nobody will remember him for anything other than that.
Yeah.
And I believe that. And this is very off topic, but Eminem came out with a new album and he mentions Helena on the album. So I think once Eminem throws you into a song, I
Yeah.
think you're pretty much you're it's time to pack it in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like Alec is such he's a real character and obviously like a tabloid favorite in some way, but like he's exactly the kind of actor who is going to be like a guy that was like popular in the 50s, but like now nobody even knows his name because his filmography sucks, to be like frank. Like he was like bombed out of so many films in like the early 90s that he's really not ever been in like a good film since like The Hunt for Red October. I mean, that's what everybody always references with him. That film came out in 1990. That
Whoa.
film's like getting close to 40 years old.
Gosh, I
And
didn't
Dick
realize it had been
Champagne
that
also
long.
points out at 35, I guess, but Dick Champagne points out that half the country hates him because he's liberal, the other half hates him because of the shooting, and everybody hates her, right?
Well,
I mean,
I
it's
think
like
100% of the country hates him because they all heard that voicemail he left for his daughter.
Yeah.
And that is that really affected that affected everything. And that really screwed him up good because I mean I don't think anyone had ever heard anything like that before. And Kim Basinger must have been really pissed at him to really because she's the one that really set to TMZ. Who else would?
Yep.
It was a voicemail. But like the lady that he had, I still can never remember her name. The lady that he had the contract with that was his quote unquote stalker.
Oh, Genevieve.
Genevieve, I can never remember her name. Yeah, but which I've reached out to Genevieve to see if she would come on our live
Yep.
because I just she's actually a really nice lady.
Yeah.
And I've reached out to her because according to her, when I do believe her, he was desperate to have this image as a great family man. He was really screwed up after this voicemail got released.
Yep.
It's his own fault, but he presented her with a contract like, oh, we're gonna have kids. You don't have to actually give birth to them. Super weird. But he just really was trying to reinvent himself, kind of as a family man. Unfortunately, he ended up meeting Hillary and her boobs are out all the time. I'm shocked that her boobs weren't out in court. I've never seen her without her boobs out. I didn't
Such
recognize
restraint. Yeah.
her.
She really
Her.
too much for the team there. Yeah.
So he's desperate to be seen as a family man, but now that is the least of his problems because he's going to be seen as the person that didn't follow directions on a set and fight and killed someone that was beloved.
Yeah, I think the other thing like about that whole incident that I sort of only clued into after like doing the terror Alec Baldwin terror timeline or whatever was like he wrote that book about parental alienation like right afterwards as like some sort of way of like doubling down on the whole voicemail thing. It was like the year afterwards he wrote this book, basically claiming what parental alienation is like a really weird deal where it's like a disputed psychological syndrome where like the Baldwin was saying and other people there's like a group of people that claim that this thing exists where like and I'm sure it does on some degree, but like what they're saying is it's like a psychiatric illness where like the mom or the dad brainwashes the kid against the other parent and like it's just like a really weird sort of like medicalization and like labeling of this sort of thing of like a high conflict divorce, and it's like basically like another like ratchet on like how high conflict divorces sort of like move into the system, and it's just such a commentary on like how terrible Baldwin was at communicating that he put that book out. And I think that really cooked him, especially because like a lot of the with like women, because he's like sort of arguing against this, and just like I don't know, just like trying to say that it's like a real thing. It's a psychiatric illness. So I think that like a lot of moms out there, like when they heard about this book, they're like, oh, what a fucking creep, Speaking of creeps, Charles Flying Angel also had a comment about like how like the Lolita parade was discussing, and like I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to comment on it. Like it's so creepy the way that.
And we literally had, and Leo, this is mostly you because I've been out most of the day. Yeah, sometimes we have to lock posts, and it's not because we are trying to censor you guys. Reddit has literally come to me and said, hey, look, we don't want to shut you down. Your sub gets an insane amount of views. You're in literally our top 3%. They said, but you cannot. The whole thing with the children is very sketchy, and you guys just need to be really careful about kind of how you speak about them. Yeah. But then, it's next thing you know, they're doing a pap walk, and their poor 10-year-old child. I just feel so bad for Carmen. I don't know, and I feel bad for locking the posts. But the only reason we're doing that, I mean, we all know we're all on the same page here. The only reason we're locking the posts is because I cannot get this sub shut down because like I was talking to you about the whistleblowers, this is the only way they'll communicate with me because it's anonymous. So we cannot get this sub shut down. So we have to be super careful. We tend to lock these threads, and it's nothing against you guys, but believe me, we're all thinking the same thing. It's clearly highly disturbing.
Yeah, and it's a delicate balancing act, and like one thing I like to think about is like the sub is like you're saying, it's a great archive, and it has, because the Baldwins manicure their social media and probably get told by PR people, hey, take that down, that's really creepy. Like the sub sort of serves as like a mirror and an archive of some of that stuff. So like on the one hand, it makes some sense to like at least reproduce their social media posts if like everybody's on the same page about like how to discuss it, and usually like most people are. But the problem today was like there's so much stuff going on, so many other things that like I just didn't have time amongst everything else I was doing to be able to like look into the reports on those posts, because it was just I was getting like a flood of like 10-15 reports like in a short amount of time about those posts, and so I just had to kill them because it was just too much to deal with in one thing, so.
And we obviously never thought in a billion years he would take his 10-year-old daughter to his murder trial and then go shopping at 5:30 after court ends. Like, these people are living on another planet, dude. And
crazy.
we're just things organized.
I think we like brought it up, and we kind of like laughed it off. Like in one of the first couple streams, we're like, "There's no way that like Hilary's gonna come with the kids," and it's like, yeah, they did, and one of them was wearing
not only did they come with the kids, they were. Oh, that yes. I'm speechless. I'm literally speechless. I feel so bad, and a lot of people are worried about the kids. That's really I can't really. I wish I could say a little bit more, but a lot of people are worried about the kids. And then with this reality show, they're the way these reality shows work. Because Lee and I were talking about this a while ago. There's I think it's on Hulu. I'm not sure. Uh, the the people that were breaking into the God, what was it? The burglar, but not the burglar bunch. The people that were
Bling
breaking
ring.
into the what?
The bling ring.
The bling ring. Okay, so the girl that was part of the bling ring was doing a reality show. And if you watch the documentary, it's I believe it's on Hulu. Um, they are being fed line like it's all fake. None of it's real. They're all playing a part, and the producers are like, "We want you to do this. We want you to do that. We want you to have this conversation." The whole thing is it's none of it's real, and I feel so bad that these poor kids that are under the age of 10 are being told that they have a role to play. It's like they're just trying to go to school and live their lives.
Yeah, it's got to be so impossibly bizarre. And so I like that comment from Cinnabang. I know the stories those Baldwin kids are going to tell. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I like referenced something like this in the Substack thing I wrote about like the whole sort of run up to the trial and how like the pap walks with like the mom and the kids, and just how bizarre that whole scene was. And yeah, it's just I don't know. I just like one thing about being a kid is like you just don't really know any other reality. So you have to imagine like how bizarre these kids like frame of reference is. Like they don't really understand, I don't think, until they get older and have like something to compare it to, how like really whack and like unique and bizarre their whole thing is. Like yeah, it's like I think I can only imagine that we will be treated to horror stories of growing up Baldwin for decades, and eventually people will experience them as something like a holodeck virtual reality program or whatever media format of choice will be in 2050. I mean, it's like really sort of what I was thinking about at that juncture is like this is going to be like something that is going to haunt and be like whatever a reality show is in 20, 30 years. Like it's yeah, and I hope I'm wrong, but Disney
Not like
dream.
nothing good is gonna. There's nothing good. There's nothing positive that is gonna come out of this, and
Yeah.
that breaks my heart. Because these kids are these kids have a shot at a normal life, and they're just gonna, now that Alec isn't gonna be making any more movies, and we we shut Hillary down pretty fast. She lost all of her sponsorships in one day. That was hilarious, by the way. Um, and the kids are gonna have to feel like they're gonna have to make money for the family. Could you imagine?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, God, it's gonna like that's why I was like looking into the whole uh Bieber Haley Baldwin thing, because there's like a weird deal like where he sort of supported her family, and it's like I don't know, it's just this showbiz stuff is like so strange the way there's like this intergenerational thing with I think of like the Beach Boys, like or like other bands that like were young and had like that like dads or moms as managers. Like it always turns out terribly, and that's the story of the Beach Boys and a million other bands. That's why there was Jackie Coogan laws back in the day where child actors had to have some of their money saved, and that doesn't exist for social media, which is so screwed up. Hell Pepino saying that there was published news that TLC is filming with him in New Mexico. So yeah, that's interesting to
Oh
hear.
my gosh. Are you
Um,
freaking kidding me?
yeah, the reality show is just gonna. It's just yeah. I mean, like just looking at the content.
Nobody wants to watch a reality show of 7 kids screaming at
Yeah,
a person that should be probably in jail. And then the
it should be in a
crazy
psych ward.
Hillary, no,
Yeah,
she's so unlikable. I just don't know. I don't know how I'm actually, I hate to admit this, I'm actually going to watch it just
yeah.
because I want to see how they're going to try to spin this. Because what I learned watching that documentary in Hulu about the bling ring, in the documentary they were doing, the whole thing is contrived. They don't have anything unless they have a storyline, and I don't know what the storyline is here.
Yeah.
I can't even come up with one.
Well, I think the trials probably be part of it, but like, and that was, yeah, it's like, it almost like makes it so that they almost have to go like backwards or something because it's such a big event. It's gonna be weird to see the whole thing, and I just want to see Hilaria on camera, like in any context, which is like terrible to say, but she's so fucking weird on camera.
It's just
Dr.
so
Penguin saying that
unlikable.
they're late,
So unlikable.
and wants to get an update on how the dismissal happened. And we went into it like in super depth, where I had like a weird presentation with like my notes on the dismissal arguments. So if you back up in the stream to, I don't know, about an hour ago, we went into
to make a long story short, the prosecution withheld a tiny bit of evidence from the defense as to where the live rounds came from, and that was it.
That
was literally it.
Yeah, it was, as we were talking about before, it was like kind of the way that Spyro, the defense counsel, lead counsel, played it was like really, the timing of it was just perfect because he dropped it towards the end of trial where there was no other remedy but for dismissal. And essentially what it was is they found a photo of 4 bullets that was like the first domino, and then they figured out that these bullets came from like a friend of Seth Kenney, another person in the whole supplier of movie set world. So it's very convoluted, but essentially, that was a pretty good summary. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what happened. They found a little nutch. I don't know if that's a word. I say that to my cat all the time. Sleep in the nutch.
And Dr. Penguin,
they got a little notch, and they ran with it. They're like, no, we've found a discrepancy. You withheld evidence, to the Baldwin's defense, and the trial's over. Apparently, that was it. Because this judge, because if you saw the judge, she was taking no guff from anybody, dude.
I like her. She's a hard ass.
Can you imagine having her as a boss? Oh my God. I would be terrified to go into work every day.
Well, yeah, and like you could tell that like she's a piece of work with like the employees too, because like at the beginning of the oral argument for the motion dismissal, she's like, whatever her assistant's name is, can you get me my notepad? And like somebody like scurries off and comes back with a fucking notepad. But like she was just so intense and like on the ball. And sometimes it got a little bit messy, but it's like, God, just imagine trying to deal with that circus. And Dr. Penguin saying, somebody was saying that we were body shaming and that post reeked of a Baldwin. No, and there's a number of like things that happened today and like just posts, people sort of like showing up to like gloat about their dismissal, where it's like, oh yeah, this probably is like a Baldwin or a Baldwin associate. And it's like, why are you even gloat? Like, it's not like I don't know. It's just such a weird instinct to like, sometimes I can just kind of tell. So I think that I don't think that you're off. I think that you're, I don't know. How about you, McNasty? Can you, like, I'm sure that there's like a number of posts you see where you're like, oh yeah, that was probably a Baldwin.
I mean, they, I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary checked the sub every now and then. She probably loves that shit. No, it's just, I mean, my number one thing right now is protecting the sub, because I am not done with this family yet. I really think that we can get them taken off the map, meaning Alec and Hillary, because there is just so much stuff about these are really not good people, and I have talked to so many people that have worked with them, that know them, that they are just not good people. And their own family, like the Baldwin, where was the rest of the Baldwin clan? And they didn't show up at the trial. Where are they?
Yeah, and the whole thing, like when that somebody pointed out, like I was asking who the woman next to Stephen was, and it was Baldwin's eldest sister, and then somebody was like, "Hey, check out this link," and it was like, "Oh yeah, she was like in charge of the foundation."
Billy Baldwin? Like, where is Billy Baldwin? Where is the rest of his brothers? He's being charged with reckless endangerment with a firearm. Where's his brothers? Of all the people that support him is Stephen, who, I'm sorry, this guy looks like the craziest person I've ever seen.
Yeah. He looks like wasn't he in that movie Encino Man? Because he kind of looked like that in this thing.
Yes, and that's why I was like, I'm just waiting to see Pauly Shore come in and sit next to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He looks. I don't know.
Unfrozen caveman. Yeah.
I don't know what the dynamics are with the Baldwin family, but it's not
anybody
good
see
at all.
China at this trial? I don't know if I saw China in the gallery, I was looking for her because I think her and Steven even showed up to Danny Masterson's trial. Because they're Bijou's parents, and she was married to him. I guess they recently got divorced. And thanks for saying that we were running the sub well, Dr. Penguin. People saying that's understandable. We really appreciate that, like Disney Dreams. And Dr. Penguin saying that the reality show might be the only justice they face. I mean, it's like I wouldn't say that that Baldwin really got off scot-free. Like, again, I'd like to emphasize that he probably spent $10 million on this trial, and the only reason he was in it to begin with is because he couldn't shut his fat mouth. So it's like this was entirely a problem of his own creating. So the fact that he somehow managed to slip the lasso, I don't know. It's just not very meaningful to me because he put himself in the trap in the first place.
Dude, I'm gonna have to sort of disagree with you on this. I think he's gonna sue New Mexico and retrieve all of that money back. I have a feeling. Literally, just by that picture that you showed me of his face, I can see him easily suing the state of New Mexico for this.
We should look at the New Mexico law, but my experience having worked on lots of cold cases and sort of knowing a little bit about the laws about what can recover from malicious prosecution and how difficult it is to go after a state. They have a lot of indemnification against that, and it depends on state to state, but it's that's not going to be an easy lawsuit for him to go after. And the other thing is it's going to cost a lot of money for him to pursue it unless he can. It's not.
Are they going to assume that he's going to? Are they going to or would they settle immediately?
Probably not. I mean, because I happen to work for the attorney generals up here in Alaska, and so I happen to know we get sued all the goddamn time, right? And we have a fleet of lawyers who deal with this shit, and so New Mexico does too. So it's they don't need to really pay. It's, they don't really settle unless it's going to cost them money to go to trial. If they have to hire outside counsel, these kind of things, it just doesn't, I'd have to look at the New Mexico law and see if there's something special about it. But it's my instinct is that he's probably not going to be able to recover anything because those types of law, it's just very difficult to get a large settlement. Lots of times they're capped in statute for how much you can recover. So it's just because you spent $10 million doesn't mean you're going to be able to get $10 million out or, whatever. He's going to have to prove damages. I don't know. It's going to be a lot more difficult than I think it might seem at first glance, just because it's complicated.
I don't know exactly how that works, but just knowing him, he's gonna try to recoup that money, obviously. And
sure.
I don't know how again anything about New Mexico and how he would be able to sue for. I don't even know what he would be suing for.
Probably malicious prosecution or something like that. Yeah. The reason why it's so difficult is because people that are in prison, pro se litigants, are always trying to file for this. They're always trying to say, oh, in this case, you did it wrong. So that's why it's sort of usually pretty regulated, is because everybody's always trying to sue for that kind of stuff.
Well, do you think, circling back, do you think Hannah, which I don't know much about Hannah, but she did load a live round into a gun. Is she going to get her case overturned, and are they going to even attempt that? Because I still don't understand. I don't think it matters where the live rounds came from. She had one freaking job to do. Don't put a live round into a gun. She did that. Is she going to? Are they going to? You think they're going to even attempt that with her?
Well, I think somebody mentioned earlier that her attorney Jason Bowles has already said that he's going to ask for a dismissal based on the dismissal in Baldwin's case. I mean, I think the difference is that the timing, Baldwin was at the end of his trial, so there's not very many remedies that are available at that point, right? Because it's already basically done and dusted. If you're after conviction and you're in the appellate phase, it's like a lot more difficult to find a live issue. But I just don't know. I have to look into it. And Blop McBloppy. There's a lot of really great names in the chat.
I love you guys so much.
A good point that I've heard before is that like one of the kids from Little People Big World was abused by somebody in production. That's also a way for kids. And and
don't even get me started on Nickelodeon, by the way.
Oh my God. But like I one of the things that like was really interesting about listening to, like, I used to listen to some of Tom Segura's podcast back in the day, and he was like a reality show editor guy, like when he first got to Hollywood. Not even an editor, but like he did like sort of like script stuff where he would like basically like write transcripts of the script, and so that they could do stuff like make like Frankenstein edits where like they could just change like whatever they wanted you to say in that. And it's like knowing that like a little bit of how that world works. It's like, yeah, it's so skeezy. So yeah, it's just really troubling on a lot of different levels.
It's like I didn't realize how scripted all of it was. I mean, even though I used to watch The Hills. Don't judge me, guys. Yeah. And they pretty much revealed at the end like the whole thing is scripted. But I did not realize until I watched that Hulu documentary on the Bling Ring.
Oh yeah, right.
They literally tell you you're gonna say this, and this is your character. You're gonna play this character, and you're gonna play this character. These kids are under 10 years old. They don't need to be doing this. So yeah. How many episodes are in a season? Is it 10?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Let's look up MILF Manor.
These kids, man, and believe me, guys, when I say that we are doing everything we can to stop this thing, but there's no stopping it. I think this is moving forward. So
yeah, and I think it's just, I guess there's about 12 episodes in a season for MILF Manor. So probably about 12.
God. MILF Manor.
Oh, yeah. In Chicago, Christine has like a follow-up point about Sarah and Seth Kinney. I guess she's saying that they conspired to cover their asses and both should be charged. And I'm sure that like that is something that might be looked into, especially now that like all this has been exposed. Like when stuff like this comes out, like when you open these kind of cans of worms, it definitely can lead into like all sorts of weird directions. And like it is super suggestive. There's so many details in that report that like beg other questions, like we were talking about earlier. And so I wouldn't be surprised if people get charged with like obstruction of justice type stuff.
So why was she not charged with obstruction of justice? That is a question I do have.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know.
Because when I heard her talk about that was the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. She was like, I just threw him in the garbage can. Like, what? So I don't know. Like, are we done? Is the case over? Like, I don't understand where we landed with this today.
Like Baldwin's case, or
is anybody else going to be charged? Like with, for example, obstruction of justice? Is Hannah going to be retried? Or is Hannah's case going to be dropped out? I don't understand where we landed here, like today. Obviously, Alec off, which we probably assumed he would, which he did. But where are we with everybody else?
I mean, I think we're sort of like in a holding pattern. I mean, part of the reason is because like this special prosecutor was like in there for a very specific reason. They're not like the normal prosecutor's office. So I'm sure that like whomever is going to be
today. Dude, she resigned today.
Yeah, and that's going to complicate things. And the other thing they're going to have to like think about is like if there's statute of limitations issues, because this happened like 3 years ago basically now, right? At least because it was October 2021. So yeah, it's getting close to 3 years ago. Statute of limitations for misdemeanors usually like 2 years, and I don't know. And so I'm just not, I'm not sure. And I don't think like the appellate stuff usually works pretty slowly unless there's so I don't think we'll know about Hannah for some time, because it's just like appellate stuff just moves at like a glacial pace. And I don't think they're going to be making any charging decisions based on evidence uncovered anytime soon, because it usually takes a while for them to do follow-up investigation and stuff like that.
Would Hannah's trial be considered an appellate case, like after what happened today?
Well, she was already convicted, so that's the trial phase, and I believe she's in the appellate phase right now because she has an active appeal, which it can take like years for appeals to run. And there's different phases of appeals where you have like your first appeal, which is like where you like look at like the trial record and what issues you preserved. It's so complicated, but like the first, she's still in her first round of appeals, which is like generally where you have the best chance at having something overturned. Once you get past that, you can still appeal, but it's like in very limited ways, sort of like what we were talking about with like, prisoners filing stuff like called post-conviction relief applications, or it's like, no shot in hell type thing. And, just people commenting about like, the way the Baldwins are getting treated and like the way the kids are acting. Mo Rogers wondering if they're going to get verbally assaulted on the New York streets. I don't know about that.
For a fact, they will be. Nobody's going to be coming up to him being like, "We are so sorry that this happened to you." It's like, bro, we all know what you did. So you pulled the trigger and you killed someone. I don't think people are going to, be that simple. I stand firmly on that people are not going to be sympathetic to him. And I hope and pray that he doesn't get any more movie roles. But at the same time, if he doesn't, he's got this reality show, and he's going to pimp his kids out, and I can't stand to even think about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through some comments because we're coming up on 2 hours. We can keep going if you want, but I just wanted to make sure that we caught up because there's a bunch of great comments. Dick Champagne talking about how he thinks that Billy and Alec don't get along, so that's probably why Billy wasn't there. And Mo Rogers cleaning up what we were talking about earlier. I guess China is actually Biju's sister, which that makes sense. But anyway, I just remember them being in the gallery for some of the Masterson trial, which was, quite the slog.
Yeah, that guy. I don't even want to talk about that guy. How much do you think he spent on this trial? Let's see. Well, how many lawyers did he have?
Yeah, he had 10 at one point. Cinnabang, we like that was one of the topics that we went into a little bit last time, and like the estimate that we came on to was a ballpark of high 7 figures to low 8 figures, so like $8 to $15 million. And we based it on like asking some people in that know big law type stuff, which is Spiro's firm is Quinn Emanuel, one of the biggest white shoe firms in the country, and also looking at their revenue and like their revenue per partner, which is about $2 million, 10 lawyers. This case has been going on for a while, so yeah, we're ballparking, but I mean, it could easily be $10 million. Yeah, easily. And then the civil case as well. So yeah, it's a lot.
Okay, so well, I actually wanted to talk to you about that. So the civil case, that's actually that's a done deal. There's no going back on that, right? He owes the Hutchins family X amount of dollars, correct? This does not change that, right?
Right. I think because my understanding is, and I don't really work in civil law, like plaintiff stuff, with the judgments, but based on the New York Times Magazine article that we read excerpts from last week or whenever that was, it sounds like Alec is technically, and everybody, because there's a number of other parties that are involved in making those payments. They're supposedly months, according to Matthew Hutchins' attorney, they're months late in making payments on in the agreement in that case, which means that Baldwin and the other parties on his side are technically in breach of the agreement.
Yes, they are.
So if Hutchins wants to keep the agreement in place and just kind of pursue them for the existing judgment, he can do that. But he can also replete it and file a new civil case because they're in breach of this one. And I don't know, I don't really know exactly what the strategy behind one or the other would be, but I think
and we don't know what the settlement was either. So
yeah, it's confidential. But I mean, like, it's, as far as I know, it's locked in if they want to keep it locked in. If they think that they might be able to get more money, it sounds like they have that option. But that's just speculation based on what they what his attorney said in the New York Times article from like last week. I can put a link in the. Actually, it'll actually take me a second. But if you go back, Dick Champagne, or excuse me, who asked that question?
I love you. I love this name. By the way.
Whoever asked that question, if you go back in the sub, like a couple weeks, somebody posted like a unlocked link to the New York Times Magazine article, which came out right before trial. That sort of was a good summary of how we got there. Mo Rogers asking, was it about Griffness that Billy and Alec didn't get along? I think they've had beef for longer than that, but do you know anything about what their disagreement's all about?
So I think it did have to do with Christmas because they it all depends on who came to their wedding.
Yeah.
Because they had a Spanish themed wedding, and everybody at that point, I kid you guys not, they flew in people from Spain that they barely even knew to be on the bride's side, and it was a Spanish themed wedding. I don't know who actually attended that wedding on the side of his family, but when Christmas came up, it was pretty hard to argue the facts at that point. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if Billy came to the wedding or not. Billy and his wife. I don't know. Do you know? Can you
Sorry,
hear
I
me?
muted myself because I'm trying to look it up and I didn't want you to hear my typing. I'm trying to look it up right now.
I don't think Billy came to the wedding. Well, I mean, but we all can agree none of them like her. We all saw that during the trial.
Yeah, there was a really great reaction shot. I can find it because I posted it. Where like during like one of the big shows of PDA. Between
I know what you're talking about.
between Hilaria and Alec, like towards the end of the trial, there was like a really interesting screen capture that somebody posted where like Alec's older sister was like sitting next to her, and like she like had this like disgusted like side eye look, like, and a bunch of other people in the gallery did, and like Billy looked up too, and it was just like everybody looked at Hilaria with like such an obvious sense of disgust, which is like really just interesting because it was just like,
it's just so gross. She has to make everything sexual, and it's like, dude, he's like an old person. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like, you're in the middle of court. What are you doing? And I was watching Emily Baker at the time, and even she was like, what did I just see? You know?
Yeah. Okay. God, there's so much stuff that went on today. But I found it. God, it's like had like a billion posts today. Here we go. All right, I'll share my screen here. I just had to like sift through like because there's just like so many different things that went down today, and so I was like kind of posting about like stuff that went down. But if you look here, like this is.
OMG, I don't want to even see this, but bring it up.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at this business.
Yeah, like the one like closest to them, that's the older sister, right? And
right.
I can play the video clip too, but like they're just like funny because like everybody's like side eyeing them as they're embracing, and it's just like, so
if you can play the video clip because I just, not that I want to end on this note, but just do it. Let's get this over with.
Yeah, just give me 1 second here because I gotta
let's get this over with because this is effing horrifying.
Yeah. Okay, let me just get it queued up here because it's okay. It's like
even with us. This is she has to turn everything sexual, and it's so grody to me.
It's one of the things that like just perplexes me. Oh, for some reason, gosh, I'm sorry. For some reason, let's see here. I might not be able to wait. Here we go. Okay, thank you. All right, just give me 1 second here. I just got to get to the tab. It was
okay. Brace yourself, folks, because this is really gross.
Yeah, it was. It's like one of those. Thankfully, somebody posted it like in a like in some sort of like weird video thing, but like the
brace
format.
Yourself, people. This is really gross.
Baldwin is now sitting next to his wife, telling her what's happening.
There's Emily.
the side eye, and then Steven, like she's like touching his face like Nick Cage
I can't with this
on
lady.
air.
I cannot with the. Oh God, I can't with this lady.
What the fuck am I watching?
Look at Steven there. It's actually good that it's slowing down here.
You guys.
Steven's like, what the fuck is going on?
Ugh.
That was like one of the most cringeworthy things I've ever seen.
They're in the middle of a courtroom. Come on, man.
Yeah.
No, I just we're just gonna unfortunately I guess what we're gonna do is tomorrow we're gonna look at the tabloids and see where they were out celebrating last night with Carmen and their little Hilaria, who I can't believe they named after the name that she imagined up for herself. I still can't believe she did that. But so I guess what we're gonna do, tomorrow is see where they went out to party tonight. Because you know that Hillary is gonna be all about that. So expect to see boobs. The boobs are gonna be coming out tonight, guys.
Yep. Yeah, well, I think that's probably a pretty good place to end it because I'm frozen now. It looks like because I played that weird video clip, it like screwed up my codec or whatever.
It was worth it though.
Yeah, no, it was a perfect way to end it. It was such a crazy. There's so many great clips, but that was, I think, one of the best. So
everybody was just grossed out. But thank you guys for sticking with us. And this is not over yet. I can still we still have a chance to hopefully get this reality show stopped. Hopefully. Yeah. It's not looking good, but it depends on if people want to come forward and challenge TLC, which I'm hoping that they're going to do. So guys, keep your fingers crossed.
All right, we'll catch you on the next one. That was a lot of fun. See y'all later.
Thank you, guys.